Good morning. I have my lovely friends Olivia and Tim here. It's going to play with us. Please stand for our opening hymn. I've got Peace Like a River, number 100. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. Got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. 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 I've got love like an ocean in my soul. Strength. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul.
Well, how's that for a good morning? Need I say more? That was great. I wasn't actually looking when the music started, and I thought Madeline was up to her old tricks again. You know, I said, man, she's really getting good at that. But well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us today. Great to have you. And Olivia, thank you for being here. And I see Peggy's holding a baby. Makes me want one. So, yes, welcome to all of you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or as we like to say in short, to create community, find meaning, and live justly. There you go. Let's see, a couple of things this morning. One, happy Father's Day. Thank you very much. Yes, how many of you know, probably most people in the room know, that Father's Day originated here in Spokane? Yeah, that's right. So I actually have been working on a 360 video story on Greenwood Memorial Cemetery. And so I visited the historical marker and gravesite of Sonora Dodd, who is nicknamed the mother of Father's Day. And she was inspired by Mother's Day and thought that fathers should also have a day of their own. And she thought this, interestingly enough, because she was raised by, her and her brother were raised by her father, a single father, William Jackson Smart, after their mother died in childbirth. And so she was so moved by the care that she received from her father that she wanted a day recognizing him too. So if you go to the memorial, you'll see the memorial marker telling her story, and then there's a bench with her father's image engraved in it as well. So beautiful, beautiful marker. But the first Father's Day was held here in Spokane in 1910, and President Woodrow Wilson thought that it was such a great idea, he sent Spokane a telegraph praising it, and it was officially recognized by proclamation by Lyndon B. Johnson, and then became a national holiday of observance in 1972 under Richard Nixon. All from our little town right here in Spokane. And Dot actually lived to see that. She was born in 1882 and wasn't laid to rest there until 1978. So she saw it become a national holiday. So anyway, pretty special day in many ways, and I love the story of its origins, not only from Spokane, but due to the care and nurturing that she received from her father. I also want to announce that next Saturday at 2, we will have a memorial service here for Steve Parker. For those who remember Steve Parker, he was a member of our congregation for many years, and a lot of people knew him more from probably being present in just about every progressive march or cause that transpired in Spokane during his time here. So he's going to be missed, and we'll be remembering him with his family next Saturday. And they would especially appreciate if members of the congregation would be there to help celebrate Steve's life. I'm going to say a quick welcome to our friends on Zoom. Looks like we have a good number of folks. Who's hosting today?
Todd, I am. I'm hosting from Italy, Stephen. And we have a substantial number today. And I think John Eckroth from France is here as well. And of course, we have our usual Canadian contingent, as well as folks from all over the United States.
Great. And where are you at right now, Stephen? Are you still in Spain? Or is
No, I'm in Italy.
Italy, that's right. Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah. There's sort of a Adriatic Sea between us, but yeah, yes. You got it right.
I was close.
You were close, but no cigar.
All right. Well, anyway, it's great to have all of you from wherever you're from, and from whether you're near or far away. It's so wonderful to be able to have the technology to build the kind of community that we're building, and especially that NAUA is now working on. Thanks so much, in large part, to some of the work Stephen and John are doing, creating an international program. So thank you for that, and for being present with us this morning.
Mm-hmm. And Bruce Knotts as well.
Oh yes, Bruce is on there too. Yes, so Bruce, who is former director of the UUA's United Nations office, and really just has an incredible wealth of diplomatic and international experience, bringing Unitarianism to the international causes that all of us care about. And Bruce, we're so fortunate to have you as part of our church and part of NAUA. So thank you so much for the gift of your experience and wisdom as well. All right, another person who is visiting us today, a special guest who's actually in the building I want to introduce you to now, is Kelsey Dorr, who is with the Refugee Youth Program. She has some information in the back she'll be able to share with you during our social period following the service. But I wanted to invite Kelsey forward to say just a few words about her organization and work and how we might be of help.
Yeah. So hello everyone, my name is Kelsey, and I'm with Lutheran Community Services Unaccompanied Refugee Minor Program is the big official name, and right now is World Refugee Month. So I was hoping to come out here today and be able to answer any questions about what Spokane's doing for refugees and what our program does. So we're a refugee foster care program, so we serve refugee youth who come without family members who can care for them, and we place them with foster homes here in Spokane area. And there's about 30 programs like us throughout the U.S., but we serve very small groups, so we're not as well known as some of the wonderful other organizations in the area. So I was hoping to spread some knowledge about us, and also if you feel called to support in any way, we're always on the lookout for foster families, because that's something that for each foster family we can serve another youth. And Spokane's just been so wonderful. Yesterday was World Refugee Day, and it decided to hail on us while we were outside. But just the amazing community of all of us just going under tents, and we had some Ukrainians who had brought their accordion and just started playing music, and it was really the Spokane that I love to call home, and it was very inspiring. So thank you very much for having me today, and I'll be here during the social hour time to hopefully talk a little bit more. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for being here and for the good and inspiring work that you're doing in the community. Let's take a couple minutes now to say hi to one another, whether you are here in person or online, whether you're Zooming or streaming with us. We're glad to have everybody, so please, greet one another. Okay, and as always, more opportunity to visit with one another during our social hour following the service, so please do stay around for that, but let's move forward now by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Our opening reflection this morning is from British evolutionary biologist, zoologist, and author of Too Many Books to Name, Richard Dawkins. This quote is from The Magic of Reality: How We Know What's Really True. The whole world is made up of incredibly tiny things, much too small to be visible to the naked eye. And yet none of the myths or so-called holy books that some people, even now, think were given to us by an all-knowing God mentions them at all. In fact, when you look at those myths and stories, you can see that they don't contain any of the knowledge that science has patiently worked out. They don't tell us how big or how old the universe is. They don't tell us how to treat cancer. They don't explain gravity or the internal combustion engine. They don't tell us about germs or nuclear fusion or electricity or anesthetics. In fact, unsurprisingly, the stories in holy books don't contain any more information about the world than was known to the primitive people who first started telling them. If these holy books really were written or dictated or inspired by all-knowing gods, don't you think it's odd that those gods said nothing about any of these important and very useful things?
Please stand, join me for What Wondrous Love, number 18 in your hymnal. What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul? When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to me gathered round, oh my soul, friends to me gathered round, oh my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends who pain and sorrow mend, with thanks unto the end I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end I will sing.
Thank you. And we're now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our thoughts and minds, and begin as we have been for some time on behalf, lighting a candle on behalf of the people of Ukraine and now hoping for a ceasefire, for an end to that war. Same with the people of Israel and the Palestinians who are suffering from the terrible violence there and longing for a cease to the madness. Welcome to name them aloud at this time, if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. Today is a special collection day, third Sunday of the month. And today's special collection, as you may have noticed, is for the minister's discretionary fund. This is a fund that I generally use for members and sometimes others who are in need of a little financial help from time to time. So it's called the Minister's Discretionary Fund because I use my discretion, of course, both in its use and regarding those who might need to take advantage of it. But it is really your fund because it is used as an extension of your compassion and generosity towards others. And this fund has always been rather healthily funded by you, and I appreciate that so much. It makes the ability to not turn people away who are in need a lot easier for me. So I thank you for your continued generosity towards the minister's discretionary fund, and we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. Then I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Wow, thank you so much. That's the perfect song for today's service, and perfectly performed by all of you. Thank you so much. It is now time for our story for all ages, and even though we don't usually have children here. We have a little one child who's just budding, but lots of young at heart. So I have brought, as usual, somebody to help me out with this period. A familiar face around here. Yes, it is one of my favorite friends, our favorite discoverologist, Professor Marty Pants, with a Z. You remembered? Yes, I did. After all these years, I'm starting to remember. It's Marty Pants with a Z. So welcome anyway, and happy Father's Day. I presume that you are a father. Yes, and I just discovered it. If that was coming from anybody but you, I might be a little bit worried. But a discoverologist, as I've learned, you say that about everything. So why don't you remind us what a discoverologist is? Yes, a discoverologist is a dipedal anthropomorph that utilizes protoplasmic extremities and ocular faculties to ascertain the nonanon. That means that he uses his hands and eyes to discover things. Okay. So, it's also really a perfect day for you to come because later I'm going to be talking about some of the best ways to go about thinking about things. Not what to think, but how to think. And given that you're an expertise, maybe you could share some of your thoughts about some of the best ways to think. Yes, I know all about thinking. After all, I discovered it, we know. How'd you know? Your reputation precedes you. So please tell us what you think or believe are some of the best ways to go about thinking. First of all, you must be curious. Curious. Yes, curiosity. Curiosity about all things, even the things that you think you already know, or the things that other people think they already know. Okay, that's pretty good advice. Anything else? Yes, awe and wonder. Every discovery must be as if you discovered it for the first time yourself. That explains a lot. Learn from others, but think for yourself. That's another good idea, okay? Anything else? Let's put these papers here where we can see what we're doing here, okay? Well, if you consider yourself a discoverologist, where the whole world is always fresh, a wonderful world, then you might just discover something you never thought of before and be able to say, I discovered it. That's my line. Yes, and I discovered it. I discovered it. I discovered it. I discovered it. Well, I discovered it too. When did you discover it? Right after you discovered it. And I discovered it. Thank you, Dr. Marty Pants, Professor Marty Pants. That's Pants with a Z. Thank you very much. Yay. Oh, that trick never gets old.
As we move into a time of meditation, you're invited to find a comfortable, receptive position. Close your eyes if you wish. Take a few deeper breaths and reflect on this quote by Richard Dawkins. After sleeping through 100 million centuries, we have finally opened our eyes on a sumptuous planet, sparkling with color, bountiful with life. Within decades, we must close our eyes again. Isn't it a noble, an enlightened way of spending our brief time in the sun to work at understanding the universe and how we have come to wake up in it?
So sorry, that was me.
Pouvons bien la bacon, faisons la guerre. En mangeant d'un grand jambon à ses flacons, jambon à ses flacons, faisons la guerre.
Quand je bois du vin clairé, ami tout tourne, 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 tourne. Aussi désormais je bois un jour arboué. Quand je bois du vin clairé, ami tout tourne, 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 tourne. Aussi désormais je bois un jour arboué. Chantons et buvons, souffle qu'on fasse à la guerre. Chantons et buvons, les amis, buvons donc. Chantons et buvons, souffle qu'on fasse à la guerre. Chantons et buvons, les amis, buvons donc. Quand je bois le blanc collé, puis tout tourne, 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 tourne. Aussi désormais je bois un jour arboué. Quand je bois du vin clairé, ami tout tourne, 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 tourne. Aussi désormais je bois un jour arboué. Chantons et buvons, souffle qu'on fasse à la guerre. Chantons et buvons, les amis, buvons donc. Chantons et buvons, souffle qu'on fasse à la guerre. Chantons et buvons, les amis, buvons donc.
Wow, he turned it into a quartet. Right on cue. It's wonderful. I don't think there's anything more musical than the sound of a baby. Laugh? Oh, you don't think crying? Well, it's according to what key it's in. And I apologize for my phone going off right during the meditation. I almost religiously turn it off, but for some reason it was the spammers tried to get me this morning. Right on cue. So when contemplating the rise of Greek philosophy and its significance to human thought and progress, I often summarize with the words of Bertrand Russell, who said, "The rise of Greek civilization, which produced this outburst of intellectual activity, is one of the most spectacular events in history. Nothing like it has ever occurred before or since." Considering that this outburst began in a couple of ancient cities along the Ionian coast during the 6th century BCE, 2,600 years ago, Russell's statement from his 1959 book, The Wisdom of the West, seems astonishing, if not an exaggeration. In our modern age, with all that we have since accomplished and are still accomplishing today, how can we possibly consider the intellectual activity of a few ancient islanders the most spectacular event in history? Yet I believe Russell's claim is true today, even in the age of computer technology, satellites and rocket ships, and the advent of artificial intelligence, which did not exist even in 1959. Because all of our greatest intellectual accomplishments today and throughout human history are rooted in the thinking established by the earliest Greek philosophers. This is true not because of what they thought, but because of how they thought. The early philosophers sought to understand the world on its own terms, as it presents itself, rather than upon superstitious, mythical, or religious explanations. And this is the only kind of thinking that has ever allowed us to accomplish the scientific, medical, and technological advances that we have today, as your Richard Dawkins reading alluded to, Lynn. No voodoo ceremonies or faith healings have ever led us to a vaccine or antibiotic. Worshippers of the moon may have danced beneath its soft light, but none ever took one small step upon its surface, let alone one giant leap for all mankind. Religion may help some individuals better cope with the world we live in, while leading others into denial and delusional thinking. But no religion or church has ever given us anything beneficial to the whole of humanity, although their adherents often believe their particular religion might do so if only they could convert everyone else in the world. If just only everyone else thought like us, things would be great. The early Greek philosophers, often referred to, improperly I think, as the pre-Socratic philosophers, were the first thinkers we know of who attempted to explain the world in natural rather than supernatural terms. An ancient Babylonian myth, for example, says that the world was created out of the remains of the sea monster Tiamat by the god Marduk after he defeated her. The Norse creation myth says similarly that the world was made by Odin, the Allfather, from the remains of an ice giant that he'd slain in battle. And the Hebrew myth that we're most familiar with today claims that it was fashioned in just 6 days by the voice commands of the Elohim. These are superstitious, obviously, and mythical explanations of reality, but the early philosophers were what we called first principle thinkers. They wanted to know what the world and reality are at the most elemental level, the ultimate stuff from which everything else proceeds. Today we would call the stuff that they were seeking quanta, or perhaps qubits. But these early thinkers did not have the advantage of nearly 3 millennia of such thinking to build upon. They were starting from nothing. And remarkably, within less than 2 centuries, about 150 years, they arrived at the answer that scientists continue to agree with today, that reality is comprised of atoms. This is the great benefit and power of not what but how these ancient thinkers thought. Their way of thinking has allowed and continues to allow human civilization to advance, and is the only thing that ever has. Unlike the stagnation that lasts far longer when humanity is mired in superstition and delusions. In seeking to explain the nature of reality, the very first of these philosophers, referred to as the Ionians, from the cities of Miletus, Colophon, and Ephesus, began by trying to determine what the underlying element of all things might be. But before we get into what they thought, why them? And why then? In her book, The Greek Way, the 19th and 20th century renowned educator and author Edith Hamilton suggests that the ancient Greeks' love of play was a major factor in the rise of philosophy. Because their natural environment gave them lots of security, freeing them from being in defensive mode, Hamilton says, the joy of life found expression. The Greeks were the very first people in the world to play, and they played on a great scale. If we had no other knowledge of what the Greeks were like, if nothing were left of Greek art and literature, the fact that they were in love with play and played magnificently would be proof enough of how they lived and how they looked at life. In their book, The Worlds of the Early Greek Philosophers, J.B. Wilbur and H.J. Allen say, the playing of games is an affair of the imagination and the mind, as well as the competitive spirit. It is an ordered activity, and the Greek genius may be looked upon as the fusing of order and action on one of the highest levels of excellence ever attained by mankind. In other words, their thinking wasn't wildly imaginative in their playfulness, hoping to stumble accidentally upon some great idea, but became disciplined, like mastering a game. These thinkers wanted to understand how best to go about thinking in a way that leads to the goal of better understanding the world. That was the win. In this way, the first philosophers learned how to reason and even developed early forms of scientific experimentation. Again, as Wilbur and Allen explain, reliance on rational rather than mythological explanation is a marked characteristic of the early Greek philosophers. It is perhaps the trait more than any other that distinguishes them as philosophers. Reason. Wilbur and Allen outline other factors that may have also contributed to how these early Greeks came to think, like the particular lighting of the region's unique landscape and mostly cloudless skies that gave them an eye for depth, details, and differences. If the Greeks were the world's first true philosophers, in that they formed a consistent and straightforward vocabulary for abstract ideas, they say, it was largely because their minds, like their eyes, sought naturally what is lucid and well-defined. The unusual economy of the region is another factor thought to have influenced their thinking. Because the area was largely unsuited for agriculture, its inhabitants depended upon commerce, which led to the arrival of merchants, artisans, traders, and industry from many places, adding to the diversity of culture and ideas, along with the necessary tolerance and curiosity that goes with it. All these different cultures and ideas represented in this area. As Heraclitus said, those who love wisdom must be inquirers into many things indeed. This, of course, is what the word philosophy means, the love of wisdom. Those who love wisdom must be inquirers into very many things indeed. Additionally, the early Greeks had no priestly class to dictate what their beliefs ought to be, which also gave them a unique degree of intellectual freedom in the ancient world, a fact making it possible for poet and philosopher to assume their important roles. And there are other contributing factors that may also help explain why the Ionians and some of the philosophers who came after them gave rise to the most spectacular outburst of intellectual activity in human history. But we already have enough to consider just a few of the qualities that define how they thought. Be playful and imaginative with your ideas. Become skilled in the use of reason. Notice the things that contrast and contradict what we think we see and know. Welcome a free exchange of ideas from different people and places. And maintain a society that encourages the freedom to think for oneself. These are the same qualities that make us spectacular thinkers today. and in my opinion are the only qualities that can. When they are absent, at best, nothing good is accomplished. At worst, terrible things happen. I'll come back to this, but first let's consider some of what these early philosophers themselves accomplished. Thales of Miletus, born around 625 BCE, is the very first thinker we know of who attempted to explain the world by engaging in experimentation, mathematics, and reason. His new way of thinking was so unusual that some wondered what good it was and poked fun of Thales. One legend has him falling into a well while looking up at the stars. And a child scoffed, "Thales is so eager to know what is happening in the sky that he can't see what's right in front of his own feet." So Thales, who discovered key principles of geometry, astronomy, and meteorology, used his knowledge to predict a better than usual olive season. Then he rented all the olive presses in town in advance. And as the olives ripened, all the growers had to rent them back from Thales at a hefty price. It is said that Thales did this just to prove that philosophy can be useful. And then he went back to living the impoverished life of a stargazer, if you will. These earliest philosophers were elementalists, meaning they tried to figure out the fundamental element in all things. And they didn't have anything like our periodic table and initially had no idea of atomic theory. To them, the elements were what they could see and touch. Thales believed this primal stuff to be water, for reasons it's not necessary to go into here. His student, Anaximander, also of Miletus, was a bit more abstract in his thinking and referred to the fundamental substance as apeiron, translated as the boundless. Anaximander didn't think the first principles could be anything finite, so he gave it, whatever it is, a name reflective of its infinite nature. Now, if this seems a bit out there, keep in mind that Anaximander was down to earth enough to have been the inventor of the sundial, maker of the first map, which included oceans, the first to have constructed a globe, the builder of a clock, and was the first to claim that life began as mud and slime and that humans evolved from fish. Anaximenes, another Milesian, 25 years younger than Anaximander, was more aligned with Thales, but instead of water, he considered air the primary element. As our soul, being air, holds us together, he said, so do breath and air surround the whole universe. Makes sense, right? Most of what's around us is air, and most of what's in the universe is empty space, invisible empty space. But he came to this because he observed that air thickens into clouds, condenses into rain, and freezes into ice and snow, hence showing that it can become other things. He further speculated, when fine, that it can become fire, right? Oxygen feeds fire, probably because wind and breath can both stoke flames. And when thickened, it becomes not only water, then earth, and then stone, because rain makes mud, mud dries, and the ground becomes harder. Although they did engage in some experimentation that we might call scientific or proto-science, most of what they conjectured was based upon mere observation and rational inferences. So, Anaximenes looked at water's behavior and drew these conclusions. Perhaps the most familiar early philosopher, Heraclitus, is well known for having considered fire to be the primal element, mostly because he observed that all things change. Right? You can't step into the same river twice. and nothing changes itself or other things more than fire does. So we have what were once considered the only elements, water, air, fire, along with earth. Empedocles, born 15 years after Heraclitus' death, was the first to argue for a complex universe. That is, one with more than one fundamental element, comprised of all four of these elements, which he called the four roots, transformed into other things through the forces of what he named love and strife, not unlike what today we might call attraction and entropy. Other early philosophers came along and wondered how, if the universe is infinite, that anything could be finite, and vice versa. Parmenides argued that change and motion must be illusions because true reality is unchanging and eternal. His student Zeno famously came up with a variety of paradoxes to prove his mentor's point, because an arrow seen to be moving, for instance, always occupies 2 points at the same time. No matter where it's at, it is by definition still or at rest, always in a state of rest. And such thinking might seem absurd and impractical to some, but it demonstrates philosophy's general ability to continue questioning what seems obvious to us, so that we are not fooled by mere appearances. Were it not for such thinking, the early philosophers would never have evolved past thinking that the primal stuff of the universe must be something that we can observe, like one or all of the four elements. Today we know there are at least 118 elements that have been discovered. Yet this way of thinking is so powerful that within less than 150 years after the first philosopher Thales was born, Leucippus and his student Democritus developed atomic theory. Less than 150 years of trying to figure out what reality subsists of, they got it right. Suggesting small, indivisible particles are eternally moving in the void to combine in various ways to form the visible world. Their science wasn't nearly as advanced as today's, but within a relatively short period of time, they had essentially figured it out, the stuff of the universe. As free and independent thinkers, through their own observations and building upon each other's logical arguments, they came to understand the underlying nature of reality nearly 2,500 years before modern scientists would rediscover it and prove the idea. Because they turned to nature itself to figure things out. They are sometimes referred to as the natural philosophers. Aristotle, who greatly admired them, called them the physikoi, which translates into physicist. But the root of this word, physis, simply means nature. So both are appropriate titles, whether we call them physicists, natural philosophers, or even pre-Socratics. The early philosophers remain the exemplars of how we ought to think if we want to make human progress. Alas, their time was brief. Compared to the tenure of the Holy Roman Empire that condemned all Greek philosophy as paganism, destroyed as much as 90% of their writings, and ushered humanity into a near millennium of intellectual stagnation and misery. This is so, I'd suggest, because the kind of thinking that dominated the Dark Age was the antithesis of the kind of thinking that made the first philosophers spectacular. Instead of being playful and imaginative, it was dogmatic and constraining. It was based upon superstition rather than reason. It refused to allow the mere utterance of any conflicting or contradicting views. It forced everyone to hold and profess the same beliefs and was hostile towards those with different ideas. It was not an ideologically free society, but was one bound by dogmas and dictums handed down by those in authority. During their era, by contrast, the early philosophers, using reason to grapple with the world on its own terms, in natural and physical terms, developed heliocentric models of the universe, along with elemental, evolutionary, and atomic theories of life and reality. They discovered musical octaves, irrational numbers, meteorology, paleontology, and other practical applications of understanding the natural world. And they engaged in early scientific experimentation, medicine, and even surgery. All of this occurred in an astonishingly brief period of time compared to the near 1,000 years of relative stagnation that was to follow. But the early philosophers weren't entirely without opposition during their own lives, although such opposition also presented itself mostly in the form of philosophy and honest inquiry. Pythagoras, for example, also counted as an early philosopher, disagreed with the Ionian philosophers' emphasis on physics and the natural world. Pythagoras rather believed that everything in the entire universe comes down to mathematics, which he often explained in moving and poetic terms. The phrase, "the music of the spheres," is attributed to Pythagoras. Indeed, he was both a philosopher and a priest, the founder of a religion named after him, Pythagoreanism, which took on some of the dogmatic and authoritarianism that religion is too often known for. Pythagoras believed in the eternal soul and that all is number, and all things exist in number. Strange as this might seem, Pythagoras and his school were discoverers of those musical octaves, of the Pythagorean theorem, and other mathematical truths that are useful in real physics. But his thinking also contradicts the Ionian philosophers' attempts to understand reality by physically grappling with the reality before us. As Greek historian Benjamin Farrington explains, herein laid a danger. Mathematics not only seemed to provide a better explanation of things than the Ionian view, it kept the souls of the brethren pure from contact with the earthly, the material, and suited the changing temper of a world in which contempt for manual labor kept pace with the growth of slavery. In a society in which contact with the technical processes of production became ever more shameful, as being fit only for slaves, it was found extraordinarily fortunate that the secret constitution of things should be revealed, not to those who manipulated them, not to those who worked with fire, but to those who drew patterns in the sand. Pen and parchment were scarce resources, so the Pythagoreans did their math in the sand. And for them, that was the extent of their meaningful interactions with the physical world. Like many, if not most, religions, in trying to understand reality, they came to despise the physical world and to escape its reality by retreating into their ideas and ideals about it, leaving the real world considered sinful and fallen and illusionary and the cause of suffering, and so on. A far worse and more unjust place in the process. This is why, to me, the very first philosophers, regardless of whatever first principle they believed in, demonstrate for us the principles necessary for the kind of thinking that will make human civilization more just while enabling us to progress together, no matter our differences. These principles were rediscovered, fortunately, during the Renaissance, a word that refers specifically to the renewed interest, the renewal of interest in the ideas of those pre-Socratic or early philosophers, but not really as much about their ideas again as their approach to thinking, how they thought. The Renaissance was the emergence from the Dark Age, which led to the Enlightenment, during which this way of thinking flourished for a time, as did human civilization for about another 2 centuries, until around 1950, when a new age of endarkenment marked by intolerance and stagnation began descending upon humanity. And that's where we're at today, a place of stagnation and inability to move forward. Today we are in desperate need of a new renaissance, another rediscovery of the only way of thinking, not what to think, but how to think, that has ever allowed us to emerge from darkness and move together toward the promise of human progress. It doesn't matter what we think, so long as we pay attention to how we think. Be playful and imaginative with your ideas. Become skilled in the use of reason. Notice the things that contrast and contradict what you think and see and believe you know. Welcome a free exchange of ideas from different people and places, and maintain a society that encourages the freedom to think for oneself. This is our intellectual heritage as religious liberals, in which lies humanity's best hope and our greatest potential. Thank you. Thank you.
Please stand, join me for our last hymn, number 1007 in the teal hymnal, There's a River Flowing in My Soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul.
Our benediction today is from the late UU minister, Reverend John W. Brigham. Go your ways, knowing not the answer to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than you know. Shalom, blessed be, salam alaikum, and amen. Sorry.
Shalom, Chavarim, Shalom, Chavarim. Shalom.
I'll pencil that.
Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus, it's my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Well, I am weak, but thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. And I'll be satisfied as long as I do walk. Let me walk close to thee. Well, when my feeble life is o'er and time for me shall be no more, just guide me gently, safely o'er to that shore, to your kingdom, to your shore.